All right, I'm using my front-facing camera, and my screen protector is cracked right now, and I haven't replaced it, so that's why it looks like you're seeing double, basically. But and I know I'm not supposed to use or look at notes for this, but I am going to be looking at this. It's just a basic list of the topics that I'm supposed to talk about, but it's not notes. At least I don't think it counts as notes. All right, so pitch is the first one. So pitch is our perceived sound that we perceive as how high a low or sound is, and it's based on the frequency. So I actually have a piano right here, so if I play a high note, then it has a higher pitch. Lower notes have a lower pitch. Most people are pretty able to distinguish between pitches by ear relatively well. And that is, pitch is very related to the next one, which is frequency. So frequency, if you have a sound wave or any kind of wave, the frequency is how often the wave is circulating, is completing one full cycle, which a cycle is when it goes like that, and that's one full cycle. And so if it's doing that a lot, many times per second, let's say, then that's a high frequency. If it's doing it less times per second, then that's a lower frequency. So if I were to draw a sound wave of this note, then the sound wave would be going up and down more often than how often the sound wave would be going up and down for this note. It would go up and down less times per second or whatever. Amplitude is different from pitch. So if I change the amplitude of a sound, I'm not changing the pitch or the frequency, but when we change amplitude, we're changing how high or how low these waves reach at their peaks. So if this is my sound wave cycle right here, it goes up and then it goes down, then a sound wave with a higher amplitude would go higher, right? And the way that we perceive that with our ears is volume. So sounds that are louder have a higher amplitude, right? So if I go, that has a really high amplitude. If I go, that's a lower amplitude. But amplitude is one of the more unique terms on this list. Most of the terms on this list, we are going to be talking about pitch and frequency more. So the next one is CPS/Hertz. So these are both defined units of measurement of pitch and frequency, mainly frequency, units of measurement of frequency of sound waves. And CPS is an older unit that's not very widely used anymore in music or in science. Hertz is a lot more standardized and a lot more widely used. So Hertz it's like an inch. 1 Hertz is like a defined unit of measurement, kind of like an inch or a foot. And so in music, we define this note as being, or maybe it's this one, I can't remember, but this A as being 440 Hertz. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's this one. And we don't define this A as being yes, we do define this A as being 440 Hertz. But we define everything else kind of based on that. And so we have on like a piano has all of the Hertz, all of the tones that we're able to really hear and have the music be very distinguishable and audible and appreciable to our ears. So we can hear more pitches and more Hertz than what's on the piano, but for musical purposes, the piano has all the Hertz frequency pitches that are really needed or widely used. So next one on the list is sample rate / bit depth. So this is one of the ones that I don't really know as much about, to be frank, but So a sample rate or a bit depth is essentially recording. When you have a device that's recording sound, the sample rate is the hertz or the frequency capability that the recording device has. And so in other words, if I am recording this song with a sample rate that is not high enough, it's not a high enough number of hertz in the sample rate, then I'm not actually going to be able to have these frequencies be in the recording. And so when we record, what we actually do is we actually sample. We actually have a sample rate of hertz that's a lot higher hertz than any of the hertz of the actual sounds in the recording, if that makes sense. And so if I were to record a song that the highest note in the song was this note, and if this note were to be, say, 800 hertz, or like this note were to be like 800 hertz, then I would want to record at a sample rate rather, of a lot more like, if my highest note in my song is 800 hertz, I want to record at like 1600 hertz, right? And the reason for that is because every note, every pitch that you ever hear actually has overtones, the strongest overtone being 1 octave above that note, and because of the harmonic series. And so you want to at the very least, to have all your bases covered, you want to at the very least be able to be recording that overtone of that note in order for it to fully sound complete. The next one is ADC/DAC. So these are two contrasting terms. They're kind of opposite terms. So ADC stands for an analog to digital converter, and DAC stands for a digital to analog converter. And so when you have a sound, when you're playing an instrument, you want to record it, that's an analog sound. If you were to record that would be an analog sound. And that's great, but computers can't interpret that sound. And so you need to run it through an ADC device, an analog to digital converter, to convert the sound waves into digital computer files, and I guess, and then a DAC is the opposite, where if you have a song or an audio file that's on a computer, like an MP3, that's a digital audio file, and you were to want to if you had a song and you had a vocalist that was being accompanied by instruments, and you wanted to figure out how to isolate and have only the recording of only the vocalist, that would be like a DAC, a digital to analog converter, is what you kind of need for that, because you would need to convert it from just being one compressed computer sound file thing to be a analog thing. So that's kind of, at least that to my understanding, that's the difference between ADC and DAC. And there are devices that do each of those two jobs. All right, the second to last thing on the list is the range of human hearing. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. So as human beings, we are able to hear a very wide range of hertz of sounds with our ears. But being able to hear a sound does not necessarily mean that it's like a pleasant sound or like a sound that we would ever use in music. So like I was saying earlier, on a piano, your highest notes, so first of all, so most humans have a range of hearing that ranges from about 20 hertz at the lowest, so like a really low sound of 20 hertz. And then at the highest, we're able to hear sounds of about 20,000 hertz. And so you may ask, why is it such a big range? Why do the numbers change so much? And the answer is because every single octave, we actually double hertz. Hertz is, if you were to graph hertz, it would be a curve. It wouldn't be a line. And so this sound, if this is 440 hertz, this is 880, this is, 1700, whatever. And so, and if you were to go the opposite way, if this is 440 hertz, this is 220 hertz, 110, 55, etc., etc. And so, yeah, and so because of that, so if this is 55 hertz, then that means that this would be 27.5 hertz. So the lowest note on the piano is 27.5 hertz, this lowest A, right? And so the lowest note, or the lowest sounds we can even hear as humans, unless you're kind of some kind of freak of nature human, is 20 hertz. And so the lowest sound we could possibly hear would not be too much lower than the lowest note on a piano before it would just become inaudible. By contrast, the highest note on the piano, if this is 440, this is 880, we're getting into over 10,000 hertz, I think, ish, when we get to the top notes of the piano. But we can hear up to around 20,000 hertz. And so you've probably heard about like dog whistles, like dogs can hear higher frequencies than humans. Like these whistles that you blow it and it's silent to us, but like the dog can hear it. And that's just because dogs can hear higher than 20,000 hertz. So they can hear very high-pitched noises that we are incapable of being able to hear. The final thing on the list is the Nyquist Theorem. So this one is related to the sample rate bit depth thing. So the Nyquist Theorem is, I'm assuming Nyquist is a person that it's named after, but it's a theorem that states that when we record audio, when we record a sound with any sort of recording device, we always want to record it at double the frequency. We kind of pretend like we're recording double the frequency of what the sound actually is. And so if I were to want to record a sound of 440 hertz and I wanted to record it very well, then I would want to record with a device that is kind of pretending like it's sampling 880 hertz. And so because of the range of human hearing being maxed out at about 20,000 hertz, we have an industry standardized hertz quantity of 44.1 kilohertz, or about 44,000 hertz. And that standard is applied across all audio recording equipment. There is audio recording equipment that exists that does do a higher sample rate than that, but because of the Nyquist theorem, because when we hear music, the highest like sounds and the highest overtones and stuff we're going to be hearing are around 20,000 hertz, because that's the highest we're capable of hearing at all. And so if you double 20,000, obviously you get about 40,000-ish. And so that's why the standard is set to that 44,000 number that was figured out by people smarter than me. And that is all derived from a theorem called the Nyquist theorem. So anyway, hopefully this made sense for my assignment, and bye.